Welcome to the Healthy Steps Nutrition live show. Today we have Dr. Udell, a licensed psychologist, with us to talk about a much needed topic. Before he introduces himself, while you guys are jumping on, go ahead and put in the chat where you are from. So what state and country you are from. We want to know where you guys are chiming in from. Dr. Udell, thank you for spending your Monday evening with me for the next 45 minutes or so.
Thank you, Nicole. I'm really glad we were able to team up and be able to do this and try to get some help out there for as many people as possible.
Absolutely. I think, stress is at an all-time high, and I would love to just, before we chime in with diving into the content, I know we have a lot of topics that I want to bring up today with managing stress, but tell me a little bit about yourself and your practice so that people can know where you're at.
That sounds like a good place to start as anywhere. So we're in, as probably not everyone watching, but we're in South Florida. We have a couple of offices and good mix of different therapists and doctors in the practice. And right now, like everyone else, we're practicing all the social distancing that's necessary, and everyone is working from home. I am in my office, but I'm not seeing patients in my office. I am coming in so that way I can have a little bit of comfort with my clinical setup. But everyone is either on some sort of telehealth, Zoom, and FaceTime. We are a pretty well-rounded practice. We work with adults, we work with children. Up until recently, we do a lot of psychological testing as needed, which would be for children that have learning problems or adults that are having pretty significant emotional problems. But the basis of what we do is one-on-one counseling. Sometimes we do couples counseling, which I'm sure we'll talk about tonight. Sometimes we do group therapy, which we'll also probably talk about. And the goal is just to get help out there when needed, whether it's something as severe as a major anxiety disorder, which I know a lot of people are experiencing because of the coronavirus, and or something as straightforward as just moving into this new reality that we have and trying to find some time to adjust for those that are not overwhelmed. So it's a good group of therapists and psychologists and psychiatrists, and we're here to help wherever we can, and hopefully I might be able to connect with a couple of people tonight just to help point you in the right direction.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you for coming on board. It looks like we have people all over the U.S., all over the map joining in. So, guys, thank you for tuning in on Monday evening. But Dr. Udell, let's just dive on into it. Like, you guys are practicing telehealth. You are doing stuff through Zoom, FaceTime right now for the most part. What are you seeing right now with your patients? Like, what's going on with them? How are you helping them? What are some things that you're seeing people dealing with that they might not normally deal with right now?
Well, I'm seeing a lot of the inside of people's houses, which is but I know that's not what you're asking. For the most part, I really am seeing people making good choices. And by that I mean, the world has been hit by something, the country's been hit by something, and people are staying home, they're practicing what we are being taught. And, it feels like it's been going on for a little bit over a month now. And in the beginning, it was slow to speed up. And I'm talking about kind of a society as a whole in the South Florida area. And now, for the most part, people are staying home, limiting their exposure, and practicing what we need to get the health on a nationwide level to where it needs to be. As far as the mental health issues, I'm really seeing some interesting things. I'm seeing a couple things. I'm starting to see some people that are starting to struggle, which and I'm not even entertaining the discussion of finances, which is a whole other category. But the isolation or the emotional kind of being deprived of the normal routine that they were having and they became accustomed to. And then I'm also seeing some people that are really kind of shifting their focus and finding the motivation to turn this into something that can be positive, like you guys are doing, where we can really kind of focus in on things and try to make the most out of something. because most of us are not suffering even though we're at home, and knock on something that's made of wood. Most of us hopefully are healthy still. So I'm seeing a shift. Some people are actually moving in the right direction, and other people are starting to get overwhelmed by the stress.
Absolutely. I think, what I've been saying for a while is like we have to turn this obstacle into an opportunity to really take control of our health. And people are forced to be at home. They're forced to have a little bit more time to cook and get in the kitchen and make some healthy dishes and really just focus on what we can control, or you can easily get depressed. I mean, so much has changed right now for people. They're out of their routines. They're working from home. A lot of us are learning how to homeschool our kids, which is an adventure to begin with, right? Yeah. I mean, there's so much going on right now, and really you can look at it from two ways. And the more you look at the positive, the more positive you see,
Right. Well, you bring up something interesting about routines. If you go back to the beginning part of this year, we all had some sort of routine, whether it was productive or not. The first few weeks was a pretty big shock as people slowly started to have to accept what was happening in society. And now we're finding the routine is set again. So one of the keys to getting through any kind of a difficult transition in life, and this is a transition that in a way we're going through together, but one of the things that is very important is being able to set a routine. So
yes.
There's a lot of people that are staying up super late. A lot of teenagers are staying up super late. But if they turn that into a routine that they're productive, it doesn't have to be as detrimental as we would once think. So routine is a very big word of what we need to do.
For those of you guys who are just joining in, have you guys figured out your new routine? Have you tried to set up a new normal? I mean, getting on a schedule has really helped me, even though we are working from home and the kitchen's right here, like setting a routine so I'm eating on a consistent schedule, still getting in. Corey said he's doing Zoom classes. They're not the same, but hey, you know what? You're getting in exercise consistently, which is a really important part of stress relief. So kudos to you. Keep doing it. I think suffering together with people virtually through those Zoom workouts is a great way to engage with people. And Dr. Udell, you had mentioned something a little bit ago that people are missing that connection with each other. So we got to figure out how to do it virtually, right?
Absolutely. And, the exercises, that's your right up your alley, so I'm going to let you focus on that. But if we talk about pillars of things that we need to do psychologically speaking and health speaking, the exercise part of it has always been important. But prior to this, you have to eat as well as you can, you have to exercise, you have to keep yourself busy, productive. And then the social side of it, we don't get the same exercise that we could prior, but like you said, there's, people like yourselves that are creating different type of platforms where whether the person's standing on the other side of the room from me or they're standing on the other side of the screen behind my camera here, it's still going to be interaction. And I'm sure a lot of you guys have connected with some friends from when you were younger and done a lot of the different kind of Zoom happy hours or Zoom meetings, or with Easter and Passover just passing, there's been a lot of religious services online. So social doesn't have to be physical. Social can be just interaction, and it is nice to see the creativity that is going on globally. It really is, and it's very important.
Absolutely. So a couple people were chiming in saying, they're doing home workouts, and someone said, I only have at most 2 people in my Zoom classes. What I would recommend is maybe trying like a coffee hour or like a coffee time or a happy hour to just get people onto Zoom talking to each other, because it could just be an obstacle that it's a platform they've never used before. They're scared. They are not comfortable with it. So just trying it out and understanding and telling people, hey, it's just a clickable link, super easy to join, and just getting people communicating with each other. I personally like the Zoom interactions, like Zoom meetings, better than just FaceTiming out communication, because it's only really one way. Like, we can read comments and we can chime in with those, but if you're doing a Zoom meeting, then people can chime in and back and forth. Obviously, there's hundreds of people on this live, so that would not work out really well for us to have a Zoom meeting with hundreds of people. We probably get nowhere because everyone would want to talk. But if you're doing a small class, I think it's a great way to interact with each other. And kind of like you said, I saw so many Zoom family Easter things yesterday with people just jumping on and communicating with each other, which is amazing. So let's talk about kind of diving into the next step here. What are some ways to manage stress right now? What are some things, like we talked about exercise, but what are some other things people can do to help manage the stress of the uncertainty at this point, right? Like we don't know how long this is going to go for, and I think that's the most stressful part of all of this.
So, I when this first started, I created a little video with a close friend of mine, Dr. Alan Lewis, who's a pediatrician, just to try to get some information out there. It was in the early stages. And one of the things that I illustrated during that was turning the news off. So it's, often I do work, I'm probably about 50-50 children and adults when I'm in my general practice. And I've spoken a lot in the past, especially living in South Florida with hurricanes. Hurricanes coming in, and we'll have the TV on, and we'll be watching the shelves clear at Home Depot and Publix, and our little son or daughter who's sitting there with wide eyes and hearing us talking to neighbors. And not all kids are over 11, but some can be. The same thing happens to adults, and even if we can mentally handle it, the amount of stress that builds up from the news can be overwhelming for some. For others, it can just be kind of a moment in history. But there should be a limitation on that. So we've got exercise, like we mentioned. We've got health, like we've mentioned. We have to limit our exposure to what we're hearing without being ignorant. We just don't want to make it a true 24/7 news cycle, which is the way of the world right now. There are other things you can do, but it always has to be, in my opinion, it has to be something that you choose. It can't be something that's forced. For example, I can tick off yoga, meditation, and religion. And someone watching this right now could say, well, I don't want to do any of those. Well, then those should not be the things you can do. But if those things are beneficial to you, then, especially now while we do mostly have a little bit more time on our hands, doing those things will be, it'll reap dividends, because it's going to kind of enrich us and give us the time for the meditation part of it, the self-searching, and the relaxation part of it. So we've got exercise, we've got food, we've got some kind of traditional relaxation, hobbies. Again, keeping as busy as possible. I'm getting more done than I think I've done in the last 6 months, and it's by following what I'm sharing with you guys and keeping super busy. So those are a lot of ways to keep your stress at a manageable level.
I think you're making a really good point of limiting the amount of news, because you could sit there and watch and then you just get more and more stressed. And if you're watching it for hours or right before you go to bed, now it could be impacting the quality of sleep that you have. So turn it off, turn on something else. I know Jason and I were struggling for a little bit, like, what can we watch? And we turned on Tiger King, and goodness, it's a hilarious show, but it got our mind completely off of what was going on, and we did not turn on our phones or anything. It was something that was very distracting. So, you need
we have to find out if Carol killed her husband. And that's
Carol Baskin killed the husband, for sure.
It sure looks that way.
It definitely was framed that way in the show. But going back to meditation, or, if you guys don't practice bright spots or positive things, I think it's a great thing to do. So figure out at the end of your workday, like, what is something awesome that happened today, and kind of reflect on that. Because again, the more positive things that you think about, the more positive things you will see. And for the kids, I know that's something that we do at dinner every single night with our kids. Like, okay, what was great that happened today? Name 2 things. And, it's usually like swimming in the pool for 5 hours, because they have 2 hours of schoolwork that they're doing. But, I think the more we can shape into the positive, the easier it's going to be for us to manage the stress, right?
Absolutely. And I like that concept. It can be said in a million different ways, but anytime you're putting a focus on something that's positive and then saying it out loud, reinforcing it, it actually turns into habits. It turns into the way we think about our expectations. Positive over negative, reward over punishment. There's dozens and dozens of ways of saying it, but a bright spot is a wonderful way to do things, and that should be the way we're focusing morning, midday, afternoon, and night. So that's a great suggestion.
It might even be just like sitting down every time you eat and think about something positive, and that becomes that routine. if you're struggling with habits, we've done a lot of research on habits. That's the way our nutrition coaching program is built. Changing more than one thing at a time is not effective. Like, there's a lot of research with that. There's a lot of things that are changing right now. So I think you really need to give yourself some grace and not try to change everything and go from 0 to 1,000 on your healthy scale, trying to exercise every day and eat every single thing that's amazing. That's great, but it's going to be really overwhelming for you and actually add more stress to your plate. So just focus on one thing at a time. Again, focus on the positive. Lots of different ways to manage stress, and you definitely mentioned a few with meditation and religion, and so many churches right now are Zooming their services, right, or have daily meditations that you can find online. Yoga, awesome suggestions here. Dr. Udell, I know. Go ahead. I feel like
I was just going to say, I think the trick is to find something that means something to you.
Yeah.
And if it's religion or relaxation or exercise, or a hobby, or social distancing, but whether it's Zoom or far away, speaking and catching up with a friend on the phone, when you take your mind off of whatever it is that's causing you the stress and you put it on something else, with any of the suggestions, that's the ultimate goal. So there are things that are better for you than others, but the goal is going to be to shift your kind of cognitive focus, so that way you're feeling better. So absolutely.
I think too, now that you're mentioning that, like, who are you surrounding yourself with, right? Like, not physically, but even virtually. If you're surrounding yourself with people that are complaining all the time and being negative, then you're going to see more of that negative stuff. So put yourself around a positive group of people that are going to help and support your journey, right? Like, we're all in it together.
Good time to connect with friends that you haven't had time to connect with from childhood. I did that with two of my closest friends from high school and some of my buddies from college. So it's a good time to do that because we're not traveling anywhere for a while. So connect yourself with good people that you get to kind of enrich yourself with.
Absolutely. It's funny, we're creating all this new video content for a nutrition challenge that we're launching next month, and one of the things was how to connect virtually, and one of my suggestions was reach out and create like a Zoom meeting for some college or high school friends. So I was like, why am I not taking this own suggestion myself? So I reached out last night, and sure enough, we have a meeting set up for tomorrow afternoon. So it's, again, like, practice what you preach. If you're telling your clients that, and if you guys are gym owners watching this, I think it's really important. You're the leader of your tribe. Like, you should be interacting with people. Set up these Zoom meetings, set up trivia. Someone else asked, how do you motivate people to attend Zoom classes? Highlight the people that are doing it awesome and get some quotes from them. So what I did with our HQ location was I texted 7 people that were coming to every single Zoom class and taking us up on accountability, because every member was paired with a nutrition coach. I just texted them saying, hey, I have a favor to ask you. You are doing amazing jumping into classes and with all the accountability. I hope that you inspire someone else. Could you give me a sentence or two on how the accountability has helped you and how much you're loving the Zoom classes? Did I maybe frame how their testimonial is going to be? I mean, I kind of led it a little bit, but I wanted them to tell people how it's helping them, because it truly is, and they tell me every single day. So get the people that are doing it and highlight the heck out of them. If you push the positivity, then you're going to have more people jump on board. So I hope that helped you. All right, so we talked about ways to manage stress. I personally struggle with this next question a ton. How do we turn it off at night?
So, it's going to be more of a personal choice. There are times, I think I'll start with when you can't turn it off, because there are going to be times that, you might get some really bad news during the day, and I hope most of us, if not all of us, are not getting bad news. There might be times that you do leave the news on and you get concerned about loved ones or people in another area. But whatever the scenario is, there's going to be times where your makeup and your own personal life is going to be tough. And now you're supposed to turn that off. For the rest of the time, the routines that we're talking about, you figure out what works for you, and you engage in something that's enjoyable, in something that's enriching, whatever the case may be. But when it's something that you can't turn off, that's when we have a problem. There are kind of tried and true methods to doing those things. And Some people will journal, some people will go ahead and try to distract themselves with something else. There are people that use medications, and we want to use medications appropriately, whether it's over the counter or not. There are people that will do exercise at night. There will be people that will go ahead and try to find some kind of soothing way of of eating something semi-healthy. But the one thing that we don't want to do is to sit and ruminate. So when we do have something that is kind of lingering at night, the wrong thing to do is to get in bed and just focus on it and toss and turn all night long. What I suggest with a lot of times when I'm doing therapy and people are having sleep problems for any reason is something called sleep hygiene, which is the practice of proper sleep techniques. And the right thing to do in those situations is get out of bed and go find something to do that's not too stimulating. In this case, I'd recommend reading, journaling, or doing something that's slightly distracting and not overly impactful or stimulating, and getting your mind off of what you were doing prior to that, so that way you can have your best to turn it off. Sometimes we won't be able to turn it off, but we're looking to try to kind of hold off the flood as much as possible, so that way we can try to put the angst that we're going through in the right place. So hopefully that helps, but if it is something that's perpetual, then sometimes we need help, and it doesn't always have to be a professional. It can be a family member, it can be a friend, and again, those things can be connected to a lot of times easier now because of how I didn't use Zoom before this all started, and I've used Skype only a handful of times, and I've got tripods and I've got passwords, and I'm figuring out all of this very easily now. So I think the same is going on for a lot of people across the country.
I know that, mental health is something often not talked about, but talking to a therapist and getting some professional help is really important. And a lot of times, especially right now, a lot of people watching this are business owners. You're super stressed. You don't know the trajectory of where your business is going to go. We don't know how long our physical doors are being shut down, especially couples who are working together. This is your only source of income. It can get super, super tough. So, what you're saying with journaling and just kind of getting up, doing something, getting your mind off of it so that you can go back to bed and get some sleep is really important. I know for one thing that I started doing was writing down the big things that I wanted to accomplish the next day at the end of today, so that it's okay, I already have that written down. I don't have to think at the beginning of my day what needs to happen. And then also ending your day with hey, what's one thing that went really awesome today with work or whatever, so that you end on that positive note. So whatever works for you, you need to figure that out. But, we got to be able to turn it off at some point so that we get some sleep. Because if you don't sleep, cortisol levels are going up, then you're super reactive and stressed, and your nutrition doesn't end up going well when you're stressed. So, it's a downward spiral from there if you're not able to turn it off. So try to practice some of these techniques that Dr. Udell is talking about. And, I put his link in the chat, so he's available. There's free, resources on the website, and also he can set you up with someone to help you individually if that's something that you're looking for. Dr. Udell, talking about spouses, a lot of people on here work with in the CrossFit industry, a lot of couples work together. They do it together, which means there's never really that separation. And now we're working from home together, which there's not that separation of the business space and our home space. What are some suggestions for you for couples watching this? Even couples that are, I'm looking at who's on here, couples that own businesses that are not gym owners. What are some suggestions that you have?
Well, I think it's almost kind of like a crucible where we're, the same rules existed before this happened. It's just intensified because, as you said, we're on top of each other all the time. So you don't get that separation to run out and go to Publix or go to the office or do something by yourself. You're there most of the time, and it's going on for quite a while and quite a while yet. There's a couple of key tenets, I would say, when it comes to any relationship. One would be communication, and communication should be clear and straightforward. There's always going to be times that we say something that maybe we meant, but we didn't mean it to come out that way. We hear something, we react strongly, but communication needs to be clear, including I need a moment. This is getting a little bit too strong for me. Obviously, everyone's going to use different language, which leads me to the other rule. So if communication's one, the other rule that I would say is setting rules, setting guidelines. Things like my wife and I have something where I don't want to talk about pretty deep or serious, usually emotional topics right before I go to bed. I don't want that rattling around my head. It makes it hard for me, especially if it's something family related, for me to get a good night's sleep. And then her rule is she doesn't want to talk about those type of things as soon as we wake up in the morning. So right now, there's plenty of time, because you don't have the nighttime, you don't have the morning, you have the rest of the day. But it doesn't matter what the rule is. It just matters that we were able to figure that out and communicate that with each other, and then we can find the time to connect, so that way we can get whatever issues resolved, or mostly resolved. So there should be hard and fast rules that couples have, and you don't have to agree with the other person's rule. You just have to respect it. And if it's not a fair rule, you talk it out, and there comes back that communication. So I would say setting ground rules for the relationship and communication, and now's when those things are the most important, because again, everything is notched up several notches just because of the amount of time that we're all together.
Absolutely. I think that's a really great suggestion. I know Jason's kind of the same way with not talking about stuff right at night. Like, he's like, all right, we are done talking about work, and I might still be thinking about work or still be working, but we are done talking about it, because that's not something you want to talk about at night. For those of you guys who are watching, what do you guys have communication with your spouses, significant others? Do you have rules that you've set as far as communication? Go ahead and type that in the chat. And while we are looking at those comments, or while I'm kind of filtering through those comments, Dr. Udell, what's working really well with people right now in regards to stress management during the coronavirus and everything that's going on? What's working really well?
Well, it's going to sound like I'm just kind of pandering to you, but it's exercise. Literally, no matter where you go, I'm up to, I think I'm almost up at 7 miles a day or every other day, so I don't blow out my knees on my bicycle. But as I'm riding around my neighborhoods, I'm seeing everyone else doing the same thing. So people that are coming into, well, no one's coming in anymore, but people that are the sessions that I'm having throughout the week. It doesn't matter if it's a teenager through the adults I work with, everyone has ramped up their exercising. So I think, especially for those of us that live in a good climate, that's probably been the most efficient use of a way of reducing our stress and staying productive. So for me, I think what I'm seeing is a lot of exercise.
I love it. I will say definitely I can agree and attest to that 1,000%. Go ahead and type in the chat, guys, what you guys are doing to manage your stress. I'd love to share some of these ideas. I can honestly say last month I exercised more than I have in 2 years. We track the amount of active days that we have in an app called Sugar Wadden. I had 23 active days. I'll probably have 28 active days this month, just because it's just become part of the routine. This is how I end my day. This is the stress relief. And if you're not exercising right now or haven't joined a Zoom class, I would highly recommend that you do it. You're going to push yourself more when you're around people, even virtually, than you would by yourself. It's just the way it goes. So I think, for the Zoom classes, people joining on there, it's not that there's an amazing workout on the other side. It's that community support and connection that we're missing from the rest of the day, right? So getting connected with some people, surrounding yourself with positive people is definitely super, super helpful. Someone said, I have a rule late at night, no messing with me, no pranking right before bed. Oh man, I should tell my husband that one. He literally doused me with a sink faucet last night. Got mess everywhere. I like that one. Someone else said that they have a red card and a green card that they put magnets on the fridge, and just doesn't mean that they're upset with each other. It just means hey, we're not going to talk about this right now, or I need some space. I like that idea too. At least you have some way to communicate with each other so that you guys can have that healthy relationship. Ashley said that she's going outside as much as possible. I love that. Yes, especially for us down in South Florida, the weather's been so nice. We can get outside and get some exercise in. I love that, Dr. Udell, you're telling people to exercise. I do think nutrition is a super important part of this too. You know, stress eating is going to counteract a lot of the hard work that you're doing. It doesn't mean that you have to eat perfect, but you do want to make sure that you're fueling your body with quality foods and having a balance and not just loading up on junk food all day. You want to have healthy food because your brain lives off of that too. Like you want to support your immune system, your entire body. If you guys are unsure about nutrition, we are offering a free webinar. I'll put the link in the chat, just talking about nutrition so that you can have a good place to start. That's a free webinar, super, super simple on healthy eating. What kind of questions do you guys have for us about stress management, working with your spouse, really anything, while we have Dr. Udell on here? Dr. Udell, is there anything else that you want to kind of bring up as we're sifting through some comments here?
Nothing that I can think of that we haven't already touched. I mean, I think at the end of the day, if we turn this time that we have of being kind of cut off from our habits, and some of them were really bad. Not everything that we did prior to the pandemic hitting us are things that we should return to. But if we use this time to refocus, we might find ourselves doing much better once this all lifts and we are able to get back to some sort of normalcy. So that's a type of insight that if you can find the positive and the negative, it's a really, really nice thing to pull from this.
Have you heard of the book Atomic Habits by James Clear?
Have not.
It is an awesome book when we're talking about habits and people's habits being all construed right now, and kind of building new habits. It's a book that talks about building habits, atomic habits, and one of the things it talks about is habit stacking, which I'm sure you've talked to your clients about before. If you're brushing your teeth, add something on to brushing your teeth because you're already doing that every single day. If you are, have another routine that you do in the morning, add a habit onto that so that it's not like you have to remember to do something at a completely different part of the day. Although we do have maybe a little bit more time right now to remember things, but trying to stack a habit on top of another habit is super helpful, and really try to just focus on one habit at a time. When you look at the research, if you just add one habit at a time, you're 80% successful with retaining that habit over a year. But if you have 3 or more things that you're trying to change at one time, it's less than 3% success rate. So it's like you try to do too many things at one time, and I think that's why a lot of people struggle with diets, right? Or challenges. They do a nutrition challenge and they change everything at one time, but then on day 30 of their 28-day challenge, they're right back to old habits because they tried to do too much at one time instead of just layering in slowly but surely. So, give yourself a little bit of grace here. There's a lot of stuff that's going on. You don't have to be perfect, but getting into a routine, like jumping into an exercise class or blocking it out as part of your day. Like I have an alarm set on my phone every single day at the same time, and I jump in the class because my alarm goes off and tells me you're done with work for the next hour and you're going to jump in this class, right? So setting alarms might be helpful too right now, just until you get into that routine. Going back to what you were talking about before at the very beginning, like we need to get some routines here, and that's a big part of managing your stress.
Great advice.
Awesome. Someone said, is there such thing as stress sleeping? Rob, man, I don't know. What do you say, Dr. Udell?
Well, I mean, one of the symptoms of a lot of things, including depression, would be oversleep. And it does not mean that you're depressed. So we use a lot of terms in day-to-day conversation that are also actual diagnoses. But a lot of people will sleep, but in this situation, if we're talking about stress sleeping, this is a unique situation that we can't compare anything that we've been through to, because the majority of people that are following the orders of the health professionals are staying home. And if you're staying home, there's only so much Tiger King you can watch. There's only so much news you can watch. There are no sports anymore for the most part. So it's kind of easy if you're watching a lot of those things and you're not following a bunch of the things that Nicole and I are saying about staying busy and getting out there. You might just doze off and fall asleep. So I'm sure if we look deep enough on this internet that we can all, dig through, we might find something about stress sleeping. I would say it's like everything else we're talking about tonight. You just have to manage it, and a body in motion stays in motion. I've fixed half the things in my backyard that I haven't even thought about fixing. I'm sitting outside as well, and I have my laptop out there and fans on me, and waving to neighbors and doing my any paperwork and emails I have to respond to. The more we're busy, it builds more energy, it builds more activity, and healthy habits. So between the eating and the exercise and the making good choices, that'll help get you away from stress sleeping and away from stress in general.
Absolutely. And I think, we're home a lot of times, and sometimes we associate home with sleeping, especially Rob, you own a gym, so you're at the gym almost all day usually. Now you're working from home. So, that could be part of it. And you burn a lot of calories. I don't know exactly the amount, but I know you burn a lot of calories when you're thinking, and we are being forced to think a lot harder when we have to essentially build businesses, virtual businesses overnight as gym owners. So Rob, give yourself a little bit of grace here. I know you've been under a lot of stress lately, but dial in your nutrition, you're exercising regularly, you're focusing on things you can control, so keep it up, buddy. All right, Lynn said, I've had to keep things organized or else I get super frustrated. I know a lot of people who've been like cleaning out closets and organizing things, taking this time, like you were saying, Dr. Udell, of just kind of picking up the clutter, doing a little spring cleaning early, right?
Yep, I'm guilty. My garage is got labeled. My daughter was helping me make labels for everything now, including wing nuts and wire nuts. But we have to try to. It's not for everyone. We have to try to manage what we can that makes sense. And some of us, unfortunately, are suffering financially, and they might be out of work. And that might be a better focus to work on trying to figure out how to, cut down on your expenses and to find other employment opportunities than it would be to organize things. But for the time in between, figuring out something that's going to be productive for you is going to give you some kind of sense of control. And the opposite of anxiety is control and activity. So it's a really, really smart thing to do. But if it feels overwhelming or it feels like a chore, well, again, for those type of people, we wouldn't do that. We would find something else to do. But yeah, I'm a victim of the same thing. I've got my next project ready to go.
I think you're bringing up a good point about, finances and expenses. A lot of people are out of work. They've, now unemployment rates are super high. I had John Briggs, who's an accountant, on a Facebook Live. I'll link that in the chat, but one of the things that we were talking about is going through like a line item budget and seeing like what reoccurring expenses do you have that you can cut because you're not utilizing those services anymore, or you're not seeing value, especially as a gym owner, right? Like we're not having our physical location isn't open anymore, so we don't need FitAid subscriptions of juices being delivered to the gym. We don't need the air to be on as high. We don't need our cleaning services every single week because we don't have people going into the physical location. So focusing on things that you can control and looking at your budget and figuring out a new budget of what do I need right now is going to help you, because truthfully, we don't know how long this will last, right?
100%. That's exactly. We're all talking about the same thing, and the smarter we are about managing our worlds, whether it's business, whether it's personal, whether it's our relationships, the better we're going to be during and after. So it really is a good time when you have this energy to focus in and work.
Absolutely. Dr. Udell, or anyone that's on this live right now, any questions you have for Dr. Udell? Dr. Udell, any final thoughts? Jen said, by the way, we are really good communicators, but it took work and pretty much all the time. So I completely agree with that. I'm sure you can say more to that, but definitely is work, right?
Yeah, it's always work, and it's work for forever. If I'm giving you a final thought, I would tell you, I know that you've linked to my web page. If anyone is struggling more than what we discussed tonight, that would be, even if it's not someone in my office, that would be the time to reach out to someone for help. We're talking about utilizing a lot of skills to make our lives better, but things are overwhelming, and sometimes it's not as easy as just doing something productive or getting some extra exercise in, or journaling or communicating. So if anyone is struggling, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. One of the things that we do is we are creating a group therapy for adults who, depending on the turnout, we'll set up groups for teenagers, but we need to see who needs it. And that's a good, cost-effective way to provide these telecommunication type services to a controlled but cohesive unit, and provide therapeutic services. So that's something that's on my webpage. And I try to call everyone back myself. And if it's not me, it's my office manager or one of the other therapists, but it's almost always me. And even if we're guiding you to someone else that might be in your insurance, because we try to use that when we can, someone that's an affordable fee, don't hesitate, because that's what we're here for. And right now, if we all kind of work together and support each other, it'll turn out well for as many people as possible, and hopefully everyone.
Awesome. I just put in the chat your website where people can contact you if they're looking for more help. I think it's really awesome that you guys are doing the group therapy sessions for people so that they can communicate with others that are probably going through something similar to them, and you guys can help facilitate a conversation and help in a group setting as well as individually. I know my husband's been working with you for a while, and we can contest that you're just an amazing person. You guys do really great things in your office and have helped a lot of people locally in South Florida, but are looking to help others too that need help right now. And I think mental health is something that's not being discussed, and we need to discuss it, because I was reading something yesterday, and I was talking about the deaths from coronavirus, but really the struggles, the aftermath of this, with strain on marriages and depression and suicides. And even after I posted this, I had messages coming in left and right from nurses saying that child abuse rates and all these things are increasing because of all the stress that's going on in people's life, and we need to be proactive and do everything that we can to control our health and our mental health too.
Yeah, absolutely. So anything that we can do, please don't hesitate.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining. Again, in the chat, there are a couple different links. One, we are hosting a free nutrition seminar on April 18th. The link to register is in the chat. Dr. Udell's link to get in touch with him and see if you can work with him, apply to be one of the people that his practice works with is the link in the chat as well. If you guys don't have any other questions, then we're going to hop off. But Dr. Udell, thank you so much for coming on board. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. I think that this is such an important topic that needs to be discussed more, and I appreciate you coming on to help all these people.
Thank you, Nicole. And again, what you guys are doing is great, and anything that we can all do together is just going to make everyone better in the long run.
Absolutely. Have a great night.
All right. Stay healthy, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.